Hey everybody, I'm Emily. I'm one of the designers with the Quilted Cow, and in this video I'm going to be showing you how to make the Hallie's half hexy bags. I'm super excited to show you this project, but first we're going to thank our sponsors. We are sponsored by Husqvarna Viking Machines and Creative Grids Cutting Mats and Rulers. Let's get started. So these Hallie's half hexy bags are super cute and easy to make. What they are, it's a zippered top and then opens into a really, really nice bag. We are using the new Quilted Cow Charming Half Hexy template to make this bag, and I'm going to show you how to do that. But first, you can get the kits on our website at thequiltedcow.com. And the pattern is sold separately on this one, so you need to make sure that you pick up the pattern as well. But the kit is going to include all the fabric plus the batting, which is a foam batting, and the zippers that you need to make both of these bags right here. They are both a zipper top bag and super cute and fun and easy to make. So let's get started making these. The first thing that you're going to do is in your kit, you're going to get a charm pack. So that charm pack, of course, or you're going to get a group of 5-inch squares. And we're going to use those 5-inch squares with this template. So in order to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to either use, if you have gotten the template, the acrylic template, you can use that to cut out your shapes with, or the pattern will include a paper version that you can trace and you can use that as well. So if you are using this template, first thing, once you get this, you're going to peel off this backing on here. And then you're going to use this to cut out your shapes. Now, what I like to do with my 5-inch squares before I do this is I like to go ahead and cut them in half. And you can see where I've cut one of these 5-inch squares in half. So if you're using the paper template, what I did was you can make a copy of that template and cut it out. And then you're going to lay that on one of your half charms, or half 5-inch square, 2.5 by 5-inch rectangles, and you're going to trace with a pen. You can use a friction pen, you can use a pencil, whatever marking tool that you want to do, but you're going to trace around this template with some sort of marking tool, and I've already done that on here. Once you've got that, the reason for that is you do not want to use a ruler to cut with the paper underneath of it, because you can cut through the paper and you can start making your template smaller and smaller. You want to keep this template the correct size. You don't want to keep going smaller and smaller with your half hexies, because your project won't turn out the right size. So once you've got that traced, you can actually stack several of these on top of each other and go ahead and use your ruler to cut it out. So whenever you use your ruler to cut it out, you're just going to set it on this straight line here and make your cut. And then I like to cut off this little corner here. And then you can turn your whole thing over. So it's pretty easy to just go and do your straight line cuts just like this. Once again, you can go ahead and stack several of these at a time. Once you've traced it on one, stack several at a time and go ahead and make your cuts on several at a time. That will make things go a lot faster. So now I've got my half hexy shapes. All right, so now I've got my half hexy shapes, and now it's time to go ahead and sew these together in rows. I like to just lay them out before I sew them together. Before I sew any of them together, I lay them all out and make sure that I like the way that it's going to look. I laid it out like this. I laid out all of my rows. I take a picture of it, and then I stack them all up, and I take them over to my sewing table, and I reference my picture to go ahead and sew them together. So this is how many you need for this small bag. And so we're going to go ahead and lay them out, and then we're going to sew them all together. When you sew these together, you are going to line them up opposite. So then you put it down like this, and you're going to line up this corner and this corner with the other two corners on there. So what we have then is we have a little bit of a layoff, a little bit extra on this edge and a little bit extra on this edge that's hanging over. So whenever you go to sew it together, your 1/4 inch is going to hit where that meets, and it's going to hit where this meets here. And then you open it up and you press it open. You want to get that as close as you can. Otherwise, your half hexies are going to be offset. They're not going to be as straight across as you want them to be. You just make sure that you get those two corners lined up with each other. It is pretty simple. Once you start doing it, you'll get the hang of it. It's not a big deal. Once you get these sewn together in the rows, then you're going to press your rows in the seams in opposite directions. So you'll notice I have one row going this way, one row with the seams going this way, and they keep alternating back and forth. These are going to nest together. That is the most excellent part of this, is that these nest together. You don't have to worry about lining up 1/4 inch whenever you're lining up your seam allowances. So I went ahead and put a couple of rows together on either side, and then I've got this middle one left to put together. I'm just going to show you how I pin these together, and I go ahead and pin these because it makes it a lot easier whenever you're doing it. If you've watched my videos before, you know that I'm not necessarily a pinner, but for this, it does make it easier if you go ahead and just pin pin a couple of rows together and then sew them and then press them and keep going that way. So what you're going to do is you're going to find out where these two meet. And like I said, the seams will nest. So if the seam allowance goes this way on this row and this way on the bottom row, the front, they will kind of shove into each other and they nest into each other. So those seam allowances meet right there. And that's exactly where you want them to be. So then I always pin behind where the seam meets so that as it goes through my machine, this is behind where the seam is going to be. And that's going to keep that seam where it needs to be as it runs through the machine as your feed dogs feed it through. So I just go through and I go ahead and I pin each join here, each of these seam allowances together, and put it in my machine and sew it through. All right, so once we've got that finished, once we've got the rows all sewed together and our bag panel all sewn together, what we're gonna do is we're gonna trim this off. So I'm gonna pretend like I've got this sewn together and the measurements are on the pattern, and you're going to measure out and you're going to basically trim off these extra corners. So you can see here where this is going to go. I obviously don't have it lined up, but you can see here you're going to basically trim off and get rid of these extra bits on the edge so we don't have wonky edges. The width should be correct. If it's not quite correct, go ahead and trim that down a little bit. I kind of left mine because it was close enough, and whenever I went to put it on the foam and did all the quilting and everything was just fine with it. It worked out just fine. But you can trim the sides, but you definitely want to get rid of these extra edges that we're not going to be using. So once we've got that finished, we are going to baste it to the foam and the backing. So I've got my batting, my foam batting, and then I've got my backing, which I cut out to the same size as my foam batting. And I like to use the free fuse powder. If you have not used the free fuse powder before, it's super simple. All you're gonna do is you're gonna shake a little bit onto your surface. And generally you want to use a pressing cloth, but I don't always use a pressing cloth because, I'm wanting to get this done and I don't always know where my pressing cloth is. But if you have just a spare piece of fabric, then you can do that. But grab your free fuse powder, you're gonna sprinkle it over the foam, sprinkle it over your batting, lay your backing or your lining fabric, lay your lining fabric on top of that, wrong sides together, make sure your pretty side is up. But that powder is going to turn to glue. So what you're going to do is you're going to take your iron and you're going to let it sit there and you're going to slowly move it and let it sit for about 4 seconds all around this so that it melts that powder and it makes it a glue and it's going to stick to your foam. And then of course, if I had this trimmed down, I would just flip it over and I would put more powder down and I would go ahead and fuse this down to that. So once you've got your panels fused together, then it's time for a little bit of sewing. So let's go ahead and move to that step. Oh, and I did want to show you also, out of the lining fabric, you're going to cut the tab pieces. Let me show you how to do this real quick. So the tab pieces, whenever you fold these together, you're going to take it wrong sides together and you're going to keep your 3-inch length here. So you're going to make the 3-inch sides meet each other, wrong sides together, and you're going to fold and press this. This is like we've done a lot of handles and a lot of tabs. You've probably seen this before, super simple and easy. You open it back up and you press the raw edges to the middle and give that a quick press. Make sure that you don't flatten out that first crease that you made, that middle crease, because we're going to go ahead and fold these in, the raw edges in, and then fold along that crease again and give it a good press so it stays nice and flat. Once you get that finished, then you're going to take it over to your sewing machine and you're going to top stitch down either side. So in the subscription box, this is one of the this or that projects for our subscription box for January. So if you have gotten the subscription box, you will have gotten 2 fat quarters instead of yardage for your lining fabric. So if you got 2 fat quarters, you're just going to pick which fat quarter you want to use for the large bag, which one you want to use for the small bag. You're going to cut your tab fabrics out of those fat quarters as well. So you may have 2 different color tabs, you may have 2 different color linings. The kits that get kitted later on, they may only have 1 fabric. So you'll just have 1 fabric that you're going to use for your lining fabric. Don't worry about it. There's plenty of fabric and your tabs will be cute no matter what. So once you get those sewn, you can just set those to the side. Now it's time to work on this panel. So what I did was I fused it on and then I lightly quilted through each row. So if you quilt a lot with this, it's going to actually make this shrink down a little bit. So you kind of have to watch that. You don't want to quilt it too much. Go ahead and quilt it as much as you want if you want to. If you want to do more quilting, you may have to do a little squaring up afterwards, but realize that the more you quilt it, the more things are going to kind of shrink down because it does shrink the panel. So I just did in between each of the rows of the half hexies, and that was plenty of quilting for me. So after that, then I cut these squares out of each corner. These are 1.5 inch squares out of each corner. And then I went around and finished off these seams because these are going to be showing on the inside of the bag. Unfortunately, the seams will show a little bit on here. So if you look on the inside of the bag, to finish them off, zigzag stitch all the way around, including these little squares that you've cut out. So get a good zigzag stitch. You can do a tighter one, a little bit looser. I did mine on about a 1.25 spacing of the zigzag or stitch length. That works for me. If you want to go a little bit tighter, you can go a little bit tighter, but that's going to keep your edges, your seams from fraying whenever you have this bag and you're using it. So go ahead and zigzag stitch all the way around. And now it's time to add our zipper. I know, zippers. Not everybody likes them, but this is really pretty simple to add. So what you're going to need to do is make sure that you have your zipper foot, and I'm going to go ahead and put my zipper foot on this machine, and then we're going to go ahead and add our zipper to the bag. So one of these short ends is where we're going to put our zipper, and what we're going to do is we're going to center it on there. Let me pull this back a little bit. We're going to center the zipper right sides together. So this is the right side of the zipper. It's going to go down on top of the right side of the bag panel. You want to make sure that your zipper pull is off this side, and also that little extra metal piece on the end is off to the other side. Those are not going to be included in the zipper part of the bag. They need to be off right now. Once you've got that, I do like to clip these, and then I'm going to take this to the machine and I'm going to sew this zipper down. All right, so once we've got our zipper sewn down, we're going to press this open and then just take it back over to your sewing machine and do a top stitch, making sure that your top stitch is far enough down that it catches the edge of the zipper tape on the back side and the seam allowance on the back side, and it makes sure that that lays down nicely. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and I'll show you what that looks like when I get back, and we'll do the other side of the zipper. All right. So I've got that stitched down, and I made sure to catch the zipper on the back side so that it's all down nicely and it's all nice and flat there. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to fold up this other short edge up to the top of the zipper now. So the pretty side of the zipper, the right side of the zipper, is going to touch the right side of the bag. We're just going to pull this up so that it meets. One thing you want to make sure of is that you are lined up on the sides here so that your sides are lined up so that they are not crooked. You don't want to be off. If you're off, then your zipper is going to be crooked whenever you zip it up. So just make sure that you line up the side edges and then line up the top raw edge of the panel with the edge of the zipper tape. And you're just going to clip it again. I'm going to take this over, I'm going to sew it down, and then I'll show you a little bit of how we're going to do the next step on the top stitching. So let me get this sewn and I'll be right back. All right, so we've got that sewn. Now to get it pressed and everything for top stitching. What we're going to do is we're going to unzip this completely and then press it and top stitch it with it unzipped like this. All right, so I have that top stitched. And the last thing that I want to do before I box these corners is to go ahead, sorry, I have a couple of threads that kind of hooked around and went to the wrong area. The last thing I want to do is I want to go ahead and base this edge of the zipper closed. So I'm going to go ahead and zip it up most of the way so it holds it straight and flat and even where I want it to go. I'm going to change my foot back out to my 1/4 inch foot. And then once again, with the free arm available on this machine, then I get to go ahead and put this under, and I'm gonna line this up and just stitch about 1/8 of an inch to the inside of the edge. I don't want it to be further than the 1/4 inch. Now, we're going to cut for the bottom box corners. So those corners that we cut off already, that's for the top around the zipper. Now we need to be able to box the bottom so that we have a nice boxy bag. To do that, we're going to flip it wrong side out again. And then, because I like to mark the lining side, you could mark the outside. It's up to you, however you want, if you want to do it the other way, but I do like to have it wrong side out. And I'm leaving my zipper the way it is for right now, but I'm going to line up my edges, make sure that everything stays lined up here. I'm going to use my big clips because I've got a little bit more bulk with both layers of foam here. And now I'm going to mark and cut the bottom boxes out of that. I'm just going to set this to the side because I don't need this for a little while. So to mark that, because we've got the 1/4 inch seam allowances on the side, but we don't have a 1/4 inch seam allowance on the bottom, we're going to reduce this to a rectangle instead of a square. So the rectangle is going to be 1.5 inches in, which is the same size as these squares, and 1.25 inches up from the bottom. So I'm just going to measure 1.5 and 1.25, which works better whenever you're on the 1 inch line. There we go. Sorry, this is one of those 3.5 inch rulers or 5, so it's got the extra 1/2 inch on the one side. So make sure whenever you're doing this that your ruler is showing correctly. You are at 1.5 and you don't have that extra 1/2 inch that you're worrying about. So I've got those cut now. And now it's time to sew down the sides. So I'm going to sew 1/4 inch down each side. Go ahead and backstitch at the beginning and end if you would like. And so I'm going to do that down both sides, and then I'm going to show you what that looks like when I come back, and then we will box the corners and finish putting this back together. Be right back. All right, so I stitched down both sides, so that is put together, and I forgot, now you get to come along on the journey with me, I forgot to make sure that our zipper was unzipped before we stitched down each side. So let's make sure we do that. Luckily, it's slightly unzipped, and so I'm going to stick my fingers in the little hole where the square is that I did not stitch and push this. I just grab the zipper tab and I push it away from me, so then I get it. It will move a lot easier that way. So then let's get this. That's much better. That's the way we need to see this. So we're going to turn the bag through the opening. Make sure you have your opening. Don't do what I did. So luckily, there was enough room that we can unzip that. So make sure that that is mostly unzipped. It doesn't have to be completely, but just mostly, because we are going to sew across this seam over here. So you don't want your zipper pull all the way unzipped. All right, so now it's time to box these corners, making sure that this zipper pull is out of the way a little bit because we're going to sew across the zipper here. So you don't want to try to sew across that. So we've got our zipper open. Once again, make sure you don't do what I did and mess up and leave it closed. And then we're going to pinch the bottom or the side of the side seam up to the zipper. And I like to go ahead and have the seam allowance open. I'm just going to kind of finger press that open a little bit. I just think it lays a little nicer. It leaves a little less bulk. So go ahead and do that. Then grab one of your tab pieces. So we have those tabs. You're going to fold it in half so that the raw edges meet. But you're going to lay that on top of where the side seams meet the zipper. So just lay that across the edge of where the bag is, across that zipper, and then meet the side seam to the center of the zipper. And you do want to try to center that as best you can. So we've got that going on there. And all I'm going to do is grab a couple of clips. Or at least one clip, and just clip that down just like that. Now, I said before that this foam folds, so go ahead and fold the foam so you've got a nice fold here that you're working with. And you're going to take this to your machine and you're going to sew 1/4 inch across this line right here, across where the box is. And backstitch over where the tab and the zipper are so that it reinforces that seam and you've got a nice strong seam right there where it's backstitched. All right, so I've got that done. I backstitched over the zipper. You do want to make sure that you are kind of taking it nice and slow over the zipper. That way you don't accidentally break a needle. If you're going too fast, it will sometimes catch on the teeth of the zipper. But if you're going slow enough, it'll help move those zipper teeth around and out of the way whenever your needle is going down. So take your time over that. Backstitch at the beginning and end, backstitch over the zipper, and everything's good. Now, this other corner, this gets a little bit more futzy, but that's why we went ahead and basted the zipper together so that stays about where you want it to be. So you're going to do the same for the other side, the other corner where the zipper is, this corner right here. All right, so we've got that done. And then the last thing is to box the bottom corners. Or the last of the boxing is to box the bottom corners. Now, when you do this, because we haven't zigzagged this yet, we are going to zigzag this before we finish. Because we haven't zigzagged this corner yet, the problem is that your fabric might fold under, and so you might have an issue with that. So I found that if I went in from the inside of the bag, put my hand on the inside, and pushed those corners out, pushed all the fabric out in those corners, made sure that everything is nice and flat, that made sure that all the fabric got caught in this seam, and you didn't accidentally on the bottom have raw edge fabric on the outside, because you don't want that. So go ahead and make sure that you push those fabrics down, make sure that they're flat inside the corners of this, inside of these two corners. Once again, open your seam allowance if you want. Make sure that you're lined up with that line that you made whenever you press the bottom of the bag. Line up the side seam with that, and then you're going to just take this over to the machine, sew your 1/4 inch seam allowance. Do the same for both sides. It's the same exact thing for both sides. Do the same for both sides. I'll show you what that looks like when I get that done. Be right back. All right, so I have my bag all boxed up. Just a couple of things left is to come back and do a zigzag stitch over this to finish out the bottom seams here. And then we're going to trim off the zipper ends. And then trim all of our extra threads. I always like to make sure that I do a good trim of all the extra threads. But trimming off the zipper ends is super easy. You can just grab your pair of scissors and slowly over the zipper teeth. You don't want to try to dull your scissors too much, but it's all right. I find it's okay with my scissors. And then just cut off those edges right there. But let me get these zigzagged, and then we'll turn this bag right side out and show you the finished product. And let me get these zigzagged real quick, and I'll be right back. All right, so I have my zigzag stitches on all of my box corners. All of my seams are finished out now with those zigzag stitches. And now it's time to turn this right side out. Once again, it is foam, super easy to push out through that nice wide zipper on the top. And then you can use your fingers pretty easily to poke out these corners. If not, grab yourself your teal thingies or your stiletto or whatever tool that you want to use and push those out. All right, so this is the Hallie's Half Hexy bags. These kits are available on our website at thequiltedcow.com. The kit that you get on our website is going to include everything that you need to make the bag. All the fabric, the foam, and the zippers will be included to make both of these bags. So you get to do that. The pattern, however, is separate, and the new charming Half Hexy template from the Quilted Cow is also sold separately. Make sure that you pick one of those up as well. Super fun and easy to use, and you can use that for cutting all of your half hexies for this project. I hope that you have enjoyed watching this video. Make sure that you like this video and subscribe to our channel so we can keep bringing you videos on how to make these awesome projects. So thanks so much for watching, and have a great day.
Okay, you wicked cool quilters, good job. You made it to the end. We would like to thank our sponsors, Husqvarna Viking Sewing Machines, Creative Grids, rulers, rotary cutters, and mats, and Wilmington Prints for the beautiful fabrics. Thanks for watching.